Ever feel like the world is moving at a million miles an hour and you're stuck in slow motion?
Yeah, I know that
It's
feeling.
like we're all trying to keep up, but the pace of change just keeps accelerating. And you know what? It's not just us feeling it. Even the most innovative companies out there are grappling with this.
Absolutely.
So today we're doing a deep dive into why some leaders fall behind, while others seem to just ride those waves of change like pros.
I like that. Ride the waves of change.
Right. Our guide for this deep dive is a fascinating article from The Waves, that website all about exploring the currents of technology, society, and policy.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's got some great stuff. Anyway, the article is called Avoiding the Fall of Innovation Leaders, 10 Choices to Remain Great. Catchy, right?
Yeah, definitely grabs your attention.
So let's unpack this, shall we? Where do you even begin with something like that?
Well, what really struck me was how the article starts off talking about this thing they call the success trap.
The success trap, huh? Sounds dangerous.
It can be. It's this idea that companies, especially really successful ones, can become so focused on their past wins, their star products, that they miss out on the next big thing.
It's like they're so busy looking in the rearview mirror, celebrating their past victories, that they don't see the roadblocks ahead.
Exactly. And what's interesting is it's not that these companies aren't innovative, it's just that they become so fixated on the product itself instead of the underlying need it fulfills for the customer.
That makes sense. It's like you can have the best flip phone in the world, but if everyone's moving towards smartphones.
Exactly. The article even brings up those classic cautionary tales like Kodak clinging to film cameras even as digital photography was taking off.
Oh yeah, Kodak, that's a big one. And what about, wasn't there something about IBM and personal computers?
Oh, absolutely. IBM initially struggled to adapt to the rise of the personal computer, too focused on their dominance in mainframes. They were slow to recognize how this new technology was going to fundamentally change the game.
It makes you wonder, what were they missing? What signs did they overlook? Were there any clues that they just didn't pick up on?
That's where this concept of creative destruction comes in. It was coined by this economist, Joseph Schumpeter, and it basically suggests that capitalism thrives on this cycle of innovation, where new products and processes inevitably replace older ones.
So it's like a constant cycle of, dare I say, disruption.
Exactly. And the key is that this destruction, while it might seem disruptive in the moment, it actually paves the way for progress. It's how we evolve, how we innovate.
So it's not about being afraid of change, but rather understanding that it's a natural part of growth, both for companies and for us as individuals.
Right on.
So this creative destruction, it's like a force of nature, right? You can't fight it, but you can learn to navigate it.
Precisely. And to help us navigate this ever-changing landscape, the article lays out these 10 choices that leaders can consider. 10 choices to help them stay ahead of the curve, to ride those waves instead of getting wiped out.
10 choices. Wow, that's like choosing toppings for a pizza. Sometimes less is more.
Right. Let's focus on a few that I found particularly insightful.
Sounds like a plan. Let's hear them.
Okay, so first up we have choice one, focus on getting jobs done. This one really stood out to me because it emphasizes the shift away from a product-centric mindset.
Okay, so instead of saying we make the best cameras, it's more about understanding that we help people capture and share their most precious moments.
Exactly. And to illustrate this point, they bring up a company we're all familiar with, Apple. They didn't just set out to make a better iPod. They took a step back and asked, what are people really using this for? They recognized a deeper desire for music, for entertainment, for connection on the go.
And boom, the iPhone was born. It revolutionized the way we communicate, consume information, you name it.
And what's so striking is that this concept extends far beyond the tech giants. It applies to any field, even our own careers.
So it's about taking a step back from the day-to-day grind and asking ourselves, what are the core jobs to be done in my own work?
Exactly. And then, are there any hints, any subtle signs that the way those jobs are done is about to change?
That is such a valuable question to ask.
Yeah.
Because if you can anticipate those changes, you can position yourself to not just survive, but thrive.
Couldn't agree more. Now, are you ready for choice two? This one really gets interesting. It's called leveraging the non-consumption market.
Non-consumption market.
Oh.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What in the world is that?
So think about it this way. When truly new disruptive technologies first emerge, they're often kind of rough around the edges.
Sure, like those first clunky cell phones. You could barely hear anything, and they were the size of a brick.
Exactly. And because of that, the mainstream market, they're not usually that keen to jump on board right away. Too many unknowns, too many kinks to work out.
They'd rather wait until things are a bit more polished.
Right. However, there are these niche markets, these non-consumption markets, where the existing solutions just aren't cutting it. They're desperate for something better, even if it's not perfect yet.
Okay, so paint me a picture here. What's an example of a non-consumption market?
The article uses a great one. Digital cameras. Remember those early digital cameras? Clunky, pixelated, not exactly what you'd call high quality.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. My first digital camera took like 5 minutes to take a single picture.
Exactly. But while the average consumer wasn't sold on them, there was one sector that saw their potential: satellite imaging. Film just wasn't practical in that context, so they were willing to take a chance on this new, albeit imperfect, technology.
Fascinating. So they became early adopters, which allowed the technology to improve and the costs to come down, eventually paving the way for mainstream adoption.
Precisely. So the takeaway here is that sometimes targeting a niche market, even one that seems small, insignificant, can be the key to refining a technology and preparing it for widespread success.
That's really interesting. It's like a hidden pathway to innovation that most people aren't even looking for.
Exactly. It challenges those assumptions we often have about how innovation unfolds.
I'm loving this. So we've got focus on getting jobs done and leveraging the non-consumption market. What's next on our whirlwind tour of innovation?
Well, I don't want to overload you with too much information, but there is one more choice I'd love to touch upon.
Let's do it.
This one really gets at a tension that many companies grapple with. It's choice 8. Focus on the life cycle and creative destruction dynamics. Essentially, it highlights the importance of balancing two things: refining your existing products and exploring completely new territory, even if it means disrupting your own success.
That sounds like a tough balancing act. It's like trying to juggle chainsaws while riding a unicycle.
It can feel that way.
Companies are naturally drawn to what's already profitable, those reliable cash cows.
Of course.
But at the same time, they need to be willing to invest in those weird ideas, those potentially disruptive innovations that might seem crazy at first glance.
You've got it. And that's where a deep understanding of innovation dynamics becomes crucial. The article uses this striking phrase. They talk about the importance of nurturing a shared understanding of innovation dynamics within a company. It's not enough for just the CEO or the head of R&D to get it. This understanding needs to be woven into the very fabric of the organization.
So it's like everyone, from the marketing team to the folks over in accounting, needs to be on the same page about how innovation really works.
Yeah.
They need to be able to spot those early signals of change we were talking about and understand why it's so vital to embrace those potentially disruptive ideas.
Exactly. And that's where leadership really steps up to the plate. The article specifically highlights choice 9, nurture a shared understanding of innovation dynamics. It's about fostering a culture where employees at every level understand that true wealth creation isn't about endlessly tweaking the same old product.
It's about having the foresight and the guts to disrupt yourself before someone else does.
You got it. It takes courage to challenge your own success, to potentially say goodbye to a product that's been a real cash cow, all in pursuit of what's next.
It does. It demands a high level of trust within the organization, too. Employees need to feel confident that taking calculated risks on new, potentially disruptive ideas won't backfire on them.
Absolutely. In fact, it should be the opposite. These bold moves, these leaps of faith should be celebrated. Because, let's face it, history has shown us time and time again that if you're not the disruptor, you're at risk of becoming the disrupted.
It's a fundamental truth of the business world.
Mm.
But, we've talked a lot about recognizing the need for change and building a culture that embraces it. But what about the actual execution? That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
You've hit on a crucial point. Recognizing the need for change is only half the battle. The ability to navigate that transition smoothly, that's equally important.
Which brings us to the 10th and final choice laid out in the article, right?
You're on a roll.
Prepare and make a timely, seamless transition. Easier said than done, I'm guessing.
It can definitely feel that way. Knowing exactly when to make that leap, how to manage it gracefully so you don't alienate your existing customers while still attracting new ones, it's a real balancing act.
It's like walking a tightrope while juggling chainsaws.
That's a vivid image, but it captures the challenge.
So what did the article have to say about getting this part right? About sticking the landing, so to speak?
They emphasize the importance of thoughtful observation and strategic timing. They introduced this concept they called relative economics.
Relative economics. Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me.
Essentially, it's about constantly evaluating how the cost and performance of these emerging technologies stack up against your existing product lineup. But it's not just about the here and now. You also need to be keenly aware of how quickly that new technology is advancing.
So it's like checking the speedometer on a car, but instead of miles per hour, you're measuring innovation per year or even innovation per month.
I like that analogy.
And just like with a car, if you don't pay attention to how fast you're going, you might miss your exit or end up somewhere you didn't intend to be.
That's a great way to put it. You need to be aware of your surroundings, the speed of the traffic around you, and where you ultimately want to go.
And speaking of keeping an eye on things, the article also reminded us about those non-consumption markets we talked about earlier, those niche areas where the existing solutions just aren't cutting it.
Right. Those early adopters can be like canaries in a coal mine, providing valuable insights into what the future might hold.
So if you see a new technology gaining serious traction in one of those non-consumption markets, it could be a sign that it's about to make the leap to the mainstream.
Exactly. It's all about connecting the dots, recognizing the patterns, and understanding the signals.
You need to be gathering those early signals, understanding the pace of change, and then crucially, having the agility to make your move when the time is right. It's like you're a surfer waiting for the perfect wave.
Oh, I like that.
You've got to have your board waxed, your balance on point, and you need to know exactly when to paddle to catch that wave at just the right moment.
It's a fantastic analogy, but it's not just about catching the wave. It's about having the skills and the infrastructure to ride it successfully. You need to make sure you have the right production capabilities in place, the right distribution channels to get your product into the hands of those eager new customers. And let's not forget about having the right business model to support this new venture.
It's like you're building a whole new ship while sailing your existing one. You've got to make sure it's seaworthy before you transfer everyone over.
That's a great way to think about it.
And speaking of the crew, what about the people side of all of this?
Ah, yes. The human element.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new technology, new markets, but we can't forget about the people who are actually doing the work.
It's often overlooked in the rush to embrace the next big thing, but it's absolutely crucial. You can have the most groundbreaking technology in the world, but if your team isn't equipped to bring it to life, to support it, to sell it with passion and understanding, well, it's all for naught.
This idea of bringing your team along on the journey really resonates with me. It reminds us that disruption isn't just about technology or market forces. It's about people, too. It's about empowering your employees to adapt and thrive in the face of change, to see themselves as active participants in this ongoing evolution.
I couldn't agree more. And it ties back to that idea we discussed earlier, nurturing a shared understanding of innovation dynamics. When everyone is on board with the mission, when they understand the why behind the changes, they're far more likely to embrace the how, even if it means stepping outside their comfort zones.
Absolutely. It's about fostering a sense of shared purpose, a collective belief that you're all in this together, riding the waves of change as a team. It's interesting, isn't it? We often talk about disruption as if it's this big, scary external force that's beyond our control. But what I'm hearing from you and from this article is that it doesn't have to be that way.
Not at all.
It's not about being afraid of disruption. It's about understanding it, even embracing it. It's about using it as a catalyst for positive change, both in the world around us and within ourselves.
You've hit the nail on the head. The central message of the article is that by understanding these patterns of innovation, these cycles of creative destruction, companies can not only survive, but thrive in this ever-changing landscape.
They can become what the article calls serial recreators,
Exactly.
constantly evolving, adapting, and reinventing themselves to stay ahead of the curve. They go from being a Kodak to an Apple, a Blockbuster to a Netflix.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is. And it's incredibly empowering when you think about it. We've covered so much ground today, from the importance of adopting a truly customer-centric approach to the power of embracing those weird ideas that might seem crazy at first glance.
Don't forget about the importance of building a company culture that views change not as a threat, but as an opportunity.
Right. A chance to learn, to grow, to become something even better. But you know me, I always like to leave our listeners with something to chew on, a thought-provoking question to ponder long after the episode ends.
Always love a good cliffhanger.
And this article sparked a question that I think is relevant to all of us, regardless of what industry we're in or what role we play within our organizations. This whole conversation about creative destruction, it really got my wheels turning. The article, it touched on how it's not just these big companies that need to adapt to this wave of change. It's us regular folks too. You know what I mean?
It's a universal challenge.
Exactly. So this is me putting it out there, and honestly, this one has my own gears turning a bit. What's one thing, and be honest with yourself here, listener, what is one thing that you're amazing at, something you're really proud of, but deep down, you wonder if it's maybe on the verge of becoming obsolete?
Oh, wow. You're really going there.
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, right?
Especially now. Yeah. The world is changing so fast.
Right. I mean, take me, for example. I'm a podcast host. It's what I love to do. But what if 5, 10 years down the line, everyone's getting their deep dives from some AI-generated, personalized audio essay beamed directly into their brains? Okay, maybe that's a bit out there, but you get the point, right?
I think you're safe for now. But the underlying message is important. We can't afford to rest on our laurels. We have to be lifelong learners, constantly seeking out ways to evolve our skills and adapt to the changing demands of the market, whatever those might be. That's where those 10 choices from the article, they become incredibly powerful, even on a personal level, you know?
It's like that first choice we talked about. Focus on getting jobs done. It encourages us to look beyond our job titles or even our current skill sets and ask ourselves, what are the fundamental problems I'm solving? And are there new, more effective ways to approach them?
Exactly. That might mean finally diving into that new software everyone's raving about. Or maybe it's about acquiring a whole new set of skills. Or who knows, maybe it means having the courage to make a bold pivot to a completely different field.
Now, that's what I call embracing change.
It's about recognizing the value of embracing that creative destruction within ourselves, you know, letting go of what we think we know, what's comfortable, to create space for something even better, something we haven't even imagined yet.
That's both exciting and a little terrifying, isn't it?
It's the double-edged sword of progress. But seriously, think about it. We have the power to be those serial recreators in our own lives, just like those innovative companies we've been discussing.
Instead of fearing change, we can choose to see it as an opportunity for growth, for reinvention, for tapping into a whole new level of creativity and innovation within ourselves.
Beautifully said. It's about recognizing that change is inevitable, but growth, that's optional.
Oh, I like that. Growth is optional. So listeners, what will you choose? Will you cling to the familiar, the comfortable, or will you embrace the transformative power of creative destruction? The answer, as always, lies within you. For now, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into this ever-evolving world around us. Until next time.